And what I want to know is where the hell is Bill Gates' name? Like, he's got to be one of the redacted people. I mean, his wife, Melinda, publicly stated that she divorced him because of his relationship with Epstein. Yet, like, we're not seeing very much on him. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. So we were going to cover another topic, but then it looked like the Epstein list was actually revealed. So they've been stringing us along. They said the Epstein list was coming out and then it didn't. And yeah, it is out now and everyone is trying to access it. So I had some trouble trying to get on the website, but we have some information that we're going to talk about. And I want to start out by saying that, like, with this list, this is not the Epstein client list. So these are people who were mentioned in a 2015 defamation lawsuit that was brought against Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend and accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, who, by the way, is now serving 20 years in prison for helping Epstein recruit and sexually abuse underage girls, in case anyone needs to get caught up on all of that. But the lawsuit was brought by Virginia Giuffre, one of his accusers. And so U.S. District Judge Loretta A. Preska ordered the documents to be unsealed, saying that most of the information and names were already made public. So why not just, let everyone have access to this? So the documents include over 1,000 pages, but the names on the list are simply people listed within the 1,000 pages. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they were clients or that they did anything wrong. So according to a Yahoo News article, quote, in the documents, Giuffre alleged that many of sexual encounters occurred under the guise of massages that Maxwell, who was a British socialite, procured for Epstein and others. And Giuffre claimed that while she was a teenager, Epstein and Maxwell pressured her into sexual encounters with powerful men, including Prince Andrew. Giuffre reached an out-of-court settlement with Prince Andrew, who still to this day denies her allegations. And as we know, or maybe you don't know if you've been living under a rock, but Epstein allegedly committed suicide in prison. Although due to like the really unusual circumstances of what happened the night that he died, many people believe that he was murdered and it was all to protect, the names of the elites involved with him. Of course, that's just a conspiracy theory at this point, but it's the leading one that most people believe. And, Tara, like, it's really funny how they can find all of the people that were anywhere near the Capitol on January 6th and hold them in prison for years without conviction. Yet we haven't heard a peep about any of Epstein's clients. Like,
Yep.
I'm sure that's because they're on the tippy top in control of everything. Like, why else would this be so hush hush for years? And, we already know about like Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton and how they frequented Epstein Island and rode on his plane, the Lolita Express. But what about the others? So we're digging into these documents and starting to connect some of the dots. But honestly, Tara, like, I don't hold out any hope whatsoever that any of these elites are going to be accountable for anything. I mean, at this point, do you really think anything will come of this?
Well, you know what I always say about accountability, Stephanie. There is none when it comes to any of these people. And like you said, there have been a lot of conspiracy theories over the past few years about which members of the rich and powerful elite are involved in sex trafficking. We've done previous episodes where we've talked about that. And the secrecy of the names on the Epstein client list has only fueled these rumors. And so now we have the release of these court documents, and it's bringing some big names to light. But as you said, there's no confirmation that any of these were clients. This is not the client list. It's a list of associated people, but it includes some incredibly prominent elites and politicians. Like you already mentioned, Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton. And honestly, as we go through these names, I don't think any of them are really going to come as a big surprise to anyone. And there wasn't any bombshell evidence released. But I'm hoping it's going to be like the Twitter files, because the judge indicated that more previously sealed court records will be disclosed, quote, on a rolling basis until completed, end quote. So I'm hoping that, like the Twitter files, we get more substantial information as more is released. But when the records are released entirely, it's expected that previously redacted names of 157 people who knew and spent time with Epstein are going to be on that list. But one of the things I do want to point out is something that Gouffreys, I'm
No
just going to go
idea.
with Gouffrey, that her lawyer, Sigrid McCauley, said in an interview with the Daily Beast. And she said, quote, "The public has wondered, and many have rightly demanded to know, how Epstein operated his vast global sex trafficking enterprise and got away with it for decades. Questions of who enabled and facilitated him, and who participated in an operation that resulted in unspeakable harm and devastation to the lives of countless girls and young women quickly surfaced. The public interest must still be served in learning more about the scale and scope of Epstein's racket to further the important goal of shutting down sex trafficking wherever it exists and holding more to account. The unsealing of these documents gets us closer to that," end quote. Okay, but here's my question. Like, does it really? Because getting back to the whole unaccountability issue, I don't think so. And earlier this week, before this information was released today, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it was revealed that Bill Clinton was identified as, like, quote, Doe 36 in these documents, and that his name was mentioned more than 50 times in the redacted files. And again, that's not a surprise, but I do want to play this clip from Real AF that came out a couple days ago. And this was before the rest of this evidence was released, but it sums up how no matter who's on this list, the information's going to go absolutely nowhere. So let's listen to this.
According to the procedure established by Judge Preska, attorneys for each of the Does were offered a preview of the court files containing their name before determinations were made about unsealing the records. Each person was afforded an opportunity to argue for keeping the records sealed. Clinton's legal team, after reviewing the excerpts, did not lodge any objections to the publications of the documents, according to Preska's order last month. So the judge gave every single one of those John Does and Jane Does an opportunity to say, hey, make a case. Keep my stuff blacked out and redacted. They didn't object to it, which is like weird in and of itself. Like, why don't you care if your name's gonna be like? Wouldn't you want? Because nothing happens to them, no matter what they do. They don't care. That's like, I'm like, okay, well, like, this is just a pure power ego. Yeah, do something about it. That's how I'm seeing it, man. Because like, that's what they do when they take the mask, when the evil villain takes their own mask off. That's them telling you, like, yeah, it's me, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. Yeah. That's what's been happening. There's no accountability for anybody in any of these situations that have happened over the last 20, 30 years in government. These people have been allowed to do whatever they want at our expense, to ruin our countries, to do whatever they think they need to do. And they don't have to be held accountable for anything.
Okay, he goes on and says a lot of other interesting things, but it's exactly what we were talking about. No one's going to be held accountable for anything. And one of the other things he talked about later on in this podcast was that these elites and these power brokers and all these people controlling the narrative, like, they're all in on it together and they're all friends. So of course nobody's going to turn anybody in, and nobody like is going to hold anyone accountable. And Andy Frisella was saying, like, the responsibility for accountability lies with us, the little people. And I just don't think that there's enough people who are brave enough to speak out or who care enough to actually do anything about it. But
Well, and one thing that's interesting too is journalist Whitney Webb. I was listening to a podcast that she had done a while back, and she said, even if information came out regarding this, they still have completely covered up like the whole decade of the 90s. Like
Yeah.
they're talking about, whatever, 2005 on, but she's like, you can't find anything anywhere from like 1994, like, any of the 90s basically, where he was, he went to jail, like he was arrested for underage um sex with a girl in Miami. So it's like, even if we get part of the story, we're never going to get the whole story. They've just been
No.
covering it up.
Yeah. And like one of the things that, going back to like the Clinton thing, one of the things I did read from one of Epstein's accusers, Johanna Soberg, she worked for Epstein from 2001 to 2006. And part of her God, I can't speak today. Part of her deposition that was unsealed was part of this recently released information. And I guess in that deposition, she was asked if Epstein had ever talked to her about Clinton. And she testified that, quote, he said one time that Clinton likes them young, referring to girls, end quote. And so, like, the only two words I have for that are Monica Lewinsky, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about like some of the other names of people who allegedly have ties to Epstein in these recently released court documents. So there's a ton of actors and celebrities that were named: David Copperfield, Michael Jackson, Kevin Spacey, Naomi Campbell, Kate Blanchett, Leonardo DiCaprio, Bruce Willis, Cameron Diaz. Like, these are some big name celebrities.
They are. And okay, I've got to say, have you heard about the whole debacle happening between Jimmy Kimmel and Aaron Rodgers?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize this until like last night, and it's like all over social media. But apparently, on a podcast, Aaron Rodgers insinuated that Jimmy Kimmel will be on Epstein's list. And I think they have history. I don't know the whole story. But then Jimmy Kimmel goes on X and writes, quote, "Dear asshole, for the record, I've not met, flown with, visited, or had any contact whatsoever with Epstein, nor will you find my name on any list other than the clearly phony nonsense that soft-brained wackos like yourself can't seem to distinguish from reality. Your reckless words put my family in danger. Keep it up and we will debate the facts further in court." And then he like tagged Aaron Rodgers. But the fact that he had like a total meltdown just made him look suspicious. And so now like the whole internet's talking about it and they're like, well, when you flip out like that, clearly you're worried about something. Now, like for the record, I don't know that his name is on the list. I haven't seen it so far, but I just think that that's really funny that he got so upset about it and just makes him look really bad, I think.
Yeah, I guess like last year when this news of this whole Epstein list first came out in March last year, Jimmy Kimmel had called Rogers a tinfoil hatter for like his speculations about the list. And so I don't know, maybe this is Rogers trying to get back at him or something. But I mean, it's entertaining for the rest of us. But aside from celebrities, other public figures include Al Gore, the late former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson, billionaire Glenn Dubin. I don't even know who that is. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
And then, of course, Donald Trump.
So, fun fact, okay, Queen Elizabeth, like before she died, she stripped Prince Andrew of all of his titles when his name became, associated with Epstein. And what I want to know is, where the hell is Bill Gates' name? Like, he's got to be one of the redacted people. I mean, his wife, Melinda, publicly stated that she divorced him because of his relationship with Epstein. Yet, like, we're not seeing very much on him, which just makes me very suspicious of like, I'm sure he's paying to have this covered up. I mean, we know his name was all over the flight logs, and Epstein also was very involved in helping him set up his charity. Yet, in all the articles I've read since all these documents became public, I haven't heard anything about Bill Gates.
I haven't seen his name come across anywhere. But the one name that the media is focusing on, of course, is the orange bad man, is Trump. And really, at this point, like, we don't know anything. But from what I read in a publication called The Daily Beast, they gave a breakdown of the involvement of some of like the higher profile names. And Trump and Epstein go back to the 1990s. when they knew each other. And even Epstein's pilot had testified at one point that Trump flew on Epstein's private jet a few times, but there was no evidence of him being accused of any involvement in sex trafficking. And I believe Trump has come out and publicly said, like, spoken out against Epstein, from what I remember.
Well, he did, and he kicked him out of his club, Mar-a-Lago, because he was hitting on an underage girl. And this was like long before, anyone knew who Epstein was. But I just had to laugh because, I mean, you're right. Like, I saw so many articles about Trump, and it was just funny because I'm like, they're really trying to distract from the fact that Clinton's name was mentioned 73 times. But in reality, like when you look through the documents, Trump's name was listed 4 times. And according to a Newsweek article that I read, one of the accusers that you had talked about, Johanna Joberg, said that while in Atlantic City, they visited one of Trump's casinos, but Giuffre, however you say it, wasn't allowed in because she was underage at the time. And later, when she was asked if she ever massaged Trump, Joberg twice responded that she never had. So, like, even though his name was listed, it kind of sounds like it exonerates him from any wrongdoing in that particular case because she said he didn't do anything. So it's just interesting how the media will try and like twist and turn things to try to take the focus off of the people on the left.
Yeah, and like some of the other evidence that Joberg, however you pronounce that she revealed in her deposition was Michael Jackson and David Copperfield were both regular visitors to Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. And she said that David Copperfield was aware that girls were getting paid to find other girls, but he didn't specify whether those girls in question were underage. And then the other celebrity names, like including DiCaprio, Bruce Willis, Cate Blanchett, and Cameron Diaz, Soberg's testimony was that she didn't actually meet any of these celebrities, and that this was mostly their names came up related to phone calls, and that she thought Epstein was basically name dropping. And there's no direct evidence of any of these people's involvement in sex trafficking either at this point, but their names are all highlighted in all these news articles. So it's like they're, trying to call attention to the wrong people in my mind. Like, where's the actual fucking list? But another name that did come up was Alan Dershowitz. And he's a high-profile defense attorney and Harvard law professor. And like he appears in portions of the deposition from 2016, where Epstein's house manager, Juan Alessi, testified under oath that Dershowitz was at Epstein's Florida mansion, quote, pretty often, and that he enjoyed, quote, massages there, which again, we know is a cover for sex. And this was apparently backed up by another household employee, Alfredo Rodriguez, who said that Dershowitz was often there alone without his family and, quote, in the presence of young girls, end quote.
Yeah. And, I mean, he's high profile, but he's not one of these like super billionaire elites or anything. Right. And it's just funny how those are the people who we're not really hearing much about so far. So something I didn't realize is that Senator Marsha Blackburn is like all over this. And apparently she's been asking for a while for the actual list to be unsealed and unredacted because this document trove, there are redacted parts in it. And according to a Fox News article, she sent a letter to Senator Durbin stating, quote, that she wanted to get transparency to discover who was involved in what way with Epstein so that we can begin to break apart this sex trafficking ring and figure out who was all involved with him. She wrote, quote, are they still involved in sex trafficking? Was there any association with cartels? We have, and we're hearing from mayors all across the country about the proliferation of sex trafficking rings and how they have seen this. We watched human trafficking become about $150 billion a year business. And as a top Republican of the Judiciary Committee Subcommittee on Human Rights, it's important to me that we continue the work we've done to fight against this human trafficking, end quote. And apparently, like, Dick Durbin was like not willing to move forward with this. But then when she kind of started going public with it and calling him out, then all of a sudden, like, his staff was like, oh, we've never heard this before. Like, we don't know what she's talking about, kind of thing, which is total bullshit, I think. That's my opinion. But Blackburn also went on the Morning Wire podcast. And this is really interesting because she stated that she believes the FBI has all of these documents, the full client list. And this is really interesting to me because there's a lot of speculation that Epstein was an informant and that this whole operation was like a setup to blackmail high-profile people, because no one can pinpoint how he got his money or where he came from. And the whole thing that he was involved in Wall Street, he was like this finance guy, is all bullshit. Like, when you trace it back, there's nothing there. It's like a cover. So that makes me think this whole thing could be very tied with some, sting operation, or who knows, but it's all a big mystery. And I think that's why it's so covered up.
Yeah. And again, I hope we get some more information as this gets uncovered, but I just think that, as we were talking about earlier, as Andy Frisella said, like, these people are all friends and they're all going to cover for each other, and they're going to give us, maybe some little bits and pieces, but the real evidence, the real fucking information, we'll probably never know.
And don't you think it's interesting how, like, Senator Blackburn is really one of the only politicians that's very much trying to get to the bottom of this? Like, you don't hear about it that often from any other politicians because, again, I'm sure they're all somehow
they're
tied into
distracted
this.
because they have to deal with the border.
The border, which is bringing in all of these people to be human trafficked. Like, see, it's like all tied together. I mean, It's very interesting, but yeah, I think you're right. I don't think this is gonna go anywhere. I mean, again, like, this has been going on since the 90s and nothing has really come of it. And Epstein, died. And with him, it appears that his client list has died as well. So we'll see, but we'll keep everyone posted. This information is kind of like dripping out. And like I said, it's hard to get on the website to see the list of 170 people, but we're going to stay on top of it and see what does come of this. And we'll keep everyone posted. So now you have some fun gossip to talk about this weekend around Epstein, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.